In today's episode, we are going to look at the 6 dumbest birthday deaths ever recorded. From a man lighting a firework while jumping off a cabin deck to a woman demanding the highest setting on a mechanical bull in a moment that went crazily wrong almost instantly. It was March 8th, 2015, at a private lakeside cabin outside Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the wooden dock at the shoreline below, while laughter and music drifted from the deck above, where friends had gathered for a weekend birthday celebration. Marcus Tolliver was 28 years old and worked as a commercial insurance adjuster in Boise. He had rented the cabin for his birthday weekend, inviting 11 friends for what he described in text messages as the most epic party of the year. Friends later described a pattern of attention-seeking behavior, often volunteering for dares that had become increasingly reckless over the previous 2 years. The cabin sat 40 feet above the lake's surface, with a wraparound deck extending 12 feet from the main structure. The water was roughly 18 feet deep near the end of the dock, but the shoreline shallowed quickly, with rocks visible near shore. Lake temperatures in early March typically hovered in the low 40s Fahrenheit, cold enough to trigger a cold shock response within seconds of immersion. Times in the sequence were later reconstructed from phone timestamps and the 911 dispatch log. That Saturday afternoon, friends estimated Marcus drank about 7 beers and 3 mixed drinks over 4 hours. By around 6:15 p.m., several friends reported he became increasingly animated, repeatedly mentioning that he wanted to do something nobody would forget. One friend warned him against swimming due to the water temperature and his intoxication, but Marcus dismissed the concern. At 6:23 p.m., Marcus announced his intention to jump from the deck into the lake while holding a lit Roman candle. 3 friends objected, with one attempting to block his path to the railing. Marcus pushed past them, climbed onto the wooden railing, and lit the firework. The Roman candle began firing colored projectiles as he stood balanced on the narrow beam. Within seconds, Marcus's unsteady stance caused the firework to angle toward his face, and one of the projectiles struck him directly. The impact caused him to lose balance and fall backward, still gripping the firework as he tumbled toward the water. Witnesses reported hearing him cry out once before impact. He entered the water at an awkward angle, with the back of his head striking the surface first. The water's temperature hit him like a shock the moment he went under. Disoriented from the head impact and submerged at an awkward angle, Marcus gasped involuntarily, aspirating water as the near-freezing temperature triggered an immediate cold shock response. He thrashed briefly at the surface, struggling against the physiological shock. The fireworks slipped from his grip and extinguished nearby. 2 friends jumped in within 30 seconds, but the cold water affected them immediately as well, slowing their movements. They reached Marcus approximately 45 seconds after he fell, finding him face down and unresponsive. With difficulty, they pulled him toward the dock's ladder as others called emergency services at 6:25 p.m. Emergency responders arrived at 6:51 p.m. after navigating the cabin's remote access road. Paramedics performed CPR for 18 minutes, but Marcus showed no signs of revival. He was pronounced dead at 7:09 p.m. on the dock. The medical examiner determined that death resulted from drowning, complicated by cold water shock and acute alcohol intoxication. Blood alcohol content measured 0.14%, nearly twice the legal driving limit. Secondary findings included blunt head trauma, consistent with an impact during the incident, and superficial burns on his right hand from holding the firework. The property owner faced no legal action, and investigators treated the incident as the result of voluntary actions. Marcus's family filed no lawsuits. 5 friends who witnessed the incident provided written statements to investigators, and 2 required counseling for several months following the event. It was July 19th, 2017, in a residential backyard in Scottsdale, Arizona. The evening air held the day's heat as temperatures remained above 95 degrees, with string lights illuminating a crowded patio where roughly 30 guests had gathered for an outdoor birthday celebration. Vanessa Chen was 31 years old and worked as a pharmaceutical sales representative traveling throughout the Southwest. She had organized her birthday party with meticulous attention to detail, hiring a catering service and renting a mechanical bull as the centerpiece entertainment. Friends described her as competitive and image-conscious, particularly regarding her social media presence. Mechanical bulls operate through a rotating base controlled by an operator who adjusts speed and intensity. The equipment typically sits on an inflatable cushioned platform measuring 16 to 20 feet in diameter, designed to absorb impact when riders fall. That Tuesday evening, the mechanical bull arrived at 7:30 p.m., operated by a 19-year-old employee from the rental company with 6 weeks of experience. The inflatable platform was positioned on the patio's concrete surface rather than the adjacent grass, as Vanessa requested for better visibility and photo opportunities. By 9:15 p.m., Vanessa had consumed approximately 5 glasses of wine over 2 hours. Multiple guests had taken turns on the bull, with the operator maintaining gentle settings. When Vanessa's turn came at 9:34 p.m., she insisted on the highest difficulty level, stating she wanted footage worthy of her Instagram story. The operator hesitated but complied after her repeated insistence. Vanessa mounted the bull wearing a sundress and sandals, neither appropriate for the activity. The operator began at a moderate setting, gradually increasing intensity as Vanessa maintained her grip. After approximately 40 seconds, the machine reached maximum speed, rotating and bucking aggressively. Witnesses observed Vanessa sliding forward on the saddle, struggling to maintain positioning. At 53 seconds into the ride, a violent forward buck launched Vanessa over the bull's head. She landed near the perimeter where the bull had been set too close to the edge, and the inflatable did not fully cover the surrounding concrete. Her head striking the patio with an audible impact, several guests heard over the music. Vanessa lay motionless as guests rushed toward her. She remained conscious initially, attempting to sit up, while blood spread from a laceration behind her right ear. One guest, a registered nurse, called 911 at 9:36 p.m. while instructing others to keep Vanessa still. However, Vanessa began vomiting and lost consciousness within 90 seconds. Paramedics arrived at 9:49 p.m. Vanessa became increasingly unresponsive during assessment, with her pupils becoming unequal and sluggish. She was transported to a trauma center, arriving at 10:03 p.m. Emergency CT scans revealed a severe epidural hematoma, with blood accumulating between her skull and the dura, increasing intracranial pressure. Neurosurgeons performed an emergency craniotomy at 10:47 p.m. Despite aggressive intervention, Vanessa's brain had sustained irreversible damage from the expanding hematoma. She was pronounced dead on July 20th, 2017. The medical examiner determined that death resulted from traumatic brain injury with epidural hematoma caused by blunt force head trauma. Contributing factors included acute alcohol intoxication and improper safety precautions. The mechanical bull operator provided a statement to investigators, and the rental company faced a lawsuit from Vanessa's family that settled for an undisclosed amount. The company subsequently required operators to deny rides to visibly intoxicated guests and enforce difficulty restrictions regardless of customer requests. Some phone footage was collected as evidence, and investigators did not release their copies publicly. It was October 12th, 2016, on a rural property outside Bend, Oregon. The afternoon sky held scattered clouds as autumn wind rustled through pine trees surrounding a cleared area where a bonfire pit sat prepared for an evening birthday gathering. Derek Paulson was 26 years old and worked as an apprentice electrician while completing his training certification. He had invited 19 friends and family members to celebrate his birthday at his uncle's 10-acre property, planning an outdoor party centered around a large bonfire. Derek had minimal experience with fire management. Safe bonfire construction requires careful fuel selection, proper spacing, and gradual building. Accelerants like gasoline are dangerous due to vapor ignition risks. When poured onto hot coals, gasoline vapors can travel several feet from the pour point, creating an invisible explosive atmosphere that ignites suddenly, often traveling back to the container. That Wednesday afternoon, Derek spent 2 hours stacking firewood, creating a structure approximately 5 feet tall and 4 feet in diameter. By 6 p.m., guests began arriving as temperatures dropped to 48 degrees. Derek lit the bonfire at 6:45 p.m. using a fire starter and newspaper, and the structure burned steadily for the next hour. By 8 p.m., the fire had burned down significantly, with flames barely visible among the glowing coals. Derek became visibly frustrated that the centerpiece of his party was diminishing. His uncle had left a 5-gallon gasoline can in a nearby shed. Despite multiple guests warning against using gasoline, Derek retrieved the container at 8:17 p.m. 7 witnesses, including Derek's girlfriend and 2 cousins, explicitly told him not to pour gasoline on the fire. Derek responded that he knew what he was doing and would pour from a safe distance. He positioned himself approximately 4 feet from the fire pit's edge, unscrewed the cap, and tilted it forward. The gasoline stream contacted the hot coals immediately. Vapors ignited suddenly, producing a flash fire that raced up the fuel stream. Within a fraction of a second, the flame front reached the plastic container still in Derek's hands. The rapid heating caused the plastic to rupture, spraying burning gasoline across Derek's torso, arms, and face. Derek was engulfed in flames instantly. He screamed and staggered backward as fire consumed his clothing. 4 guests tackled him to the ground within seconds, smothering flames with jackets and blankets. The entire incident, from initial pour to extinguishment, lasted under half a minute. Derek's girlfriend called 911 at 8:18 p.m. while others continued providing aid. Derek remained conscious but incoherent as guests tried to keep him still and avoid pulling away burned clothing. Emergency services arrived at 8:37 p.m., 19 minutes after the call, due to the remote location. Paramedics administered pain medication and began fluid resuscitation. Derek had sustained full-thickness burns covering approximately 47% of his body's surface area, concentrated on his face, neck, chest, arms, and hands. He was airlifted to a regional burn center, arriving at 9:12 p.m. Over the next several days, Derek's condition worsened as swelling from thermal injury and smoke inhalation required mechanical ventilation. By October 14th, sepsis developed and his kidneys began to fail. On October 16th, 2016, he suffered cardiac arrest and could not be resuscitated. The medical examiner ruled the death accidental, caused by multi-organ failure from severe burns and septic shock. It was June 3rd, 2018, at a paintball facility outside Richmond, Virginia. The morning sun had already pushed temperatures into the low 80s as humidity hung over the wooded playing field enclosed by safety netting and inflatable barriers. Tyler Brennan was 24 years old and worked as a junior graphic designer at a small advertising agency. He had organized a paintball outing for his birthday, inviting 14 coworkers and friends. Tyler had limited but confident familiarity with the sport. Friends described him as enthusiastic, but prone to ignoring rules he considered overly cautious. Paintball facilities require full-face protective masks at all times in active play areas, as paintballs travel at roughly 280 feet per second and can cause catastrophic eye and facial injuries. Staff were required to enforce these rules without exception. That Sunday morning, Tyler's group arrived early and received a mandatory safety briefing before play began. The owner emphasized that masks had to remain on in all designated areas, with immediate ejection for violations. The first game began at 11:20 a.m., with Tyler's group divided into 2 teams across a wooded capture-the-flag course. The heat and humidity made the masks uncomfortable and prone to fogging. After the round ended at 11:37 a.m., players gathered in the designated safe zone to hydrate and discuss strategy. At 11:41 a.m., Tyler removed his mask completely, wiping sweat from his face and complaining about the heat. A referee immediately approached, instructing him to replace the mask or exit to the parking lot. Tyler acknowledged, but continued holding the mask, prompting a repeated warning as he began raising it toward his face. Before Tyler could secure the mask, A paintball struck him directly in his left eye. The impact occurred from approximately 45 feet away, fired by a player whose section referee's radio had malfunctioned, preventing the brake signal from reaching that area. The player was conducting a flanking maneuver and spotted what he believed was an active opponent. Tyler collapsed immediately, both hands covering his face as he screamed. Blinded and disoriented by the impact, he stumbled backward and fell, striking the back of his head against a wooden field barrier before coming to rest on the ground. The facility's owner called 911 at 11:43 a.m. Tyler remained conscious but confused, repeatedly saying he could not see. Assessment confirmed a complete rupture of the left globe and fractures of the orbital floor. Within 2 hours, Tyler began showing signs of a more severe head injury, including worsening headache, confusion, and repeated vomiting. Emergency imaging revealed a rapidly expanding intracranial hematoma caused by the secondary head impact during the fall. By 2:30 p.m., Tyler's consciousness declined rapidly as pressure inside his skull increased. Neurosurgeons attempted emergency surgery, but the bleeding could not be controlled, and he died later that afternoon. The medical examiner ruled the death accidental, caused by traumatic brain injury with intracranial hemorrhage after blunt force head trauma sustained during the fall. A wrongful death lawsuit was later settled, and the facility strengthened mask enforcement policies. The player who fired the shot faced no charges due to the equipment malfunction. It was August 28, 2014, at a private residence in Fresno, California. The evening air held the Central Valley's dry heat as the sun descended toward the horizon, casting orange light across a backyard where a swimming pool reflected the changing sky, and a small group gathered for a birthday dinner. Rachel Domingo was 29 years old and worked as an elementary school teacher, teaching 3rd grade at a public school. She had invited 8 close friends to her home for a quiet birthday celebration, planning a poolside dinner followed by dessert. Rachel was a capable swimmer who had grown up with a pool at her childhood home, giving her decades of experience and confidence in the water. That Thursday evening, Rachel's guests arrived between 6:30 and 7 p.m. The group ate dinner on the patio, with Rachel consuming several large glasses of wine between 7:15 and 9 p.m. Witnesses later reported she showed visible signs of intoxication, including louder speech and unsteady movement when walking to the kitchen. Shortly after 9:20 p.m., Rachel announced her intention to swim, stating the water would feel refreshing. 2 friends suggested waiting, noting her intoxication, but Rachel insisted she was fine. She walked to the pool's edge, then went inside to change into a swimsuit. Rachel returned a few minutes later and descended the shallow end steps, submerging to her shoulders in the 4-foot section. She swam toward the deep end at a relaxed pace, covering the pool's 30-foot length in approximately 40 seconds as her friends continued their conversation nearby. Witnesses estimated that shortly before 9:35 p.m., Rachel reached the deep end and attempted a flip turn, pushing off the wall underwater to reverse direction. Her rotation appeared awkward and uncontrolled. Rather than surfacing immediately, Rachel remained underwater for what friends initially assumed was breath holding. After approximately 15 seconds, one friend called out Rachel's name, receiving no response. She walked to the pool's edge and observed Rachel floating face down, motionless in 8 feet of water. The friend screamed for help and jumped in fully clothed. 2 other guests entered the water immediately, reaching Rachel within seconds. They pulled her to the surface and discovered she was unconscious and not breathing. The group struggled to lift her from the pool, getting her onto the deck about 2 minutes after she was first seen face down. One guest, trained in CPR, began chest compressions while another called 911. Paramedics arrived about 12 minutes after the call and took over resuscitation using advanced airway support and continued compressions. Rachel had no spontaneous breathing or cardiac activity and was transported to a nearby hospital where physicians continued efforts for 35 more minutes before declaring death at 10:28 p.m. The medical examiner ruled the cause of death drowning, with acute alcohol intoxication as a significant contributing factor. Her blood alcohol level measured 0.16%, and water was found in her lungs and stomach, confirming aspiration. Investigators found no injuries or mechanical issues, and the death was ruled accidental. Her school later held a memorial service and offered counseling to affected students. It was November 15, 2019, at a private event space in Nashville, Tennessee. The evening was cool and clear as music thumped from inside a converted warehouse, hosting approximately 80 guests. Jordan Ellis was 27 years old and worked as a social media manager for a boutique marketing firm. He had rented the industrial space for his birthday party, investing over $3,000 in DJ services, catering, and an open bar. Friends described Jordan as extroverted and attention-focused, frequently planning elaborate events for his social media following. The venue occupied a renovated warehouse with exposed brick walls, polished concrete floors, and a mezzanine level accessible by staircase and a vintage industrial elevator restored for aesthetic purposes. The elevator, salvaged from a demolished factory, operated without modern safety interlocks and used an open cage with a manual gate. That Friday evening, Jordan's party began at 8 p.m. By 10:30 p.m., he had consumed an estimated 6 mixed drinks and 2 shots based on bar receipts and witness accounts. He moved constantly through the crowd, filming Instagram stories and encouraging guests to use the elevator for aesthetic shots on the mezzanine. At 11:07 p.m., Jordan entered the elevator with 3 friends, intending to access the mezzanine 20 feet above. The elevator featured metal grating walls and a manually secured scissor gate. Jordan pressed the up button after one friend secured the gate, and the elevator began its slow ascent. Approximately halfway up, Jordan noticed his phone had fallen from his pocket and remained on the ground floor. Instead of continuing to the mezzanine, he decided to retrieve it immediately. He pulled the gate open while the elevator was still moving, which did not trigger any automatic stop because the elevator lacked such mechanisms. Jordan crouched and extended his upper body through the open gate, reaching toward his phone while the elevator continued rising. His friends shouted warnings, but Jordan continued leaning outward. The elevator's motion brought the cage's metal ceiling frame into alignment with the mezzanine's underside, reinforced with steel I-beams. Jordan's head and upper torso were extended outside the cage when the top met the mezzanine floor's support structure. His body was caught between the rising elevator roof and the stationary steel beam. The crushing force was instant and catastrophic. The motor continued running for approximately 2 seconds before one friend hit the emergency stop. Multiple guests on both levels witnessed the incident as the elevator stopped, with Jordan partially crushed between the steel surfaces. One guest called 911 at 11:09 p.m., while others attempted to reverse the elevator. The manual controls required specific sequencing, and panic caused several failed attempts. Emergency responders arrived at 11:17 p.m. with rescue equipment. Firefighters stabilized the elevator and carefully lowered it, releasing Jordan's body at 11:31 p.m. Paramedics confirmed death at the scene, noting catastrophic crush injuries to his head, neck, and upper chest that caused almost immediate death. The medical examiner ruled the cause compressive asphyxia with severe cranial and thoracic trauma, and toxicology showed a blood alcohol level of 0.11%. Inspectors later found the elevator lacked permits and required safety interlocks, leading to the venue's permanent closure and criminal negligence charges against the owner, who later pleaded guilty and paid substantial fines. Jordan's family filed a wrongful death lawsuit that was settled, and several witnesses later required trauma counseling. Thanks for watching. If you like these stories, click here.